Thank you, Mr. Ponusamy. Thank you to the CII for inviting me and my fellow speakers, Mr. Chandyok, Mrs. Datta. It was enlightening to hear your thoughts. I suppose being a finance minister and not really an industry or commerce minister, I'm a bit constrained in what I can say. And so if you don't mind, I will talk a bit philosophically and then a bit practically. Philosophically, I agree with the point made earlier that this crisis, like every other crisis, has exacerbated inequality between nations, inequality within every society, inequality between states, inequality within a state. In fact, I would go one step further and say the crisis has also exposed some weaknesses in our administrative models. Some of these are long-standing, but they have been highlighted during the crisis. And so I think, even if you go one step further than that, the whole notion of Marxism, of communism, was that if you look at labor and capital as the two kind of competing components of the economy, then that the returns to labor would continuously get smaller as the capital base grew, and the returns to capital would keep on increasing to the point where you had such great inequality in society that you would end up with social strife. That was the fundamental tenet of Marxist communism. Democracy was supposed to be the antidote to that. The antidote was that you give one man one vote, one person one vote, you give equal rights, and you have this institution of government that equals the playing field, that takes care of the weakest, that produces social sector schemes, and that keeps cohesion in society and reduces the inequality to the extent that at least it doesn't result in strife or disruption. If we look at it from that perspective, then the last couple of years of the pandemic have not gone so well for us because, in fact, as I say, it has increased inequality quite a bit. So if I could broadly kind of say that we have this unique opportunity to look at improving in a few dimensions and focusing on them as a priority, both as a state government, indeed as a union government, which I'm hopeful that the budget of the Union Finance Minister, the Honorable Union Finance Minister, will show. The first, I think, is something I've been talking a lot about, which is that we have to increase the administrative capability of government. Many of our systems are archaic. The complexity of government has increased exponentially. The scale of our economy, the size of our population has gone up. And in most cases, we have not built the infrastructure, the systems, the institutional memory, the continuity to match. Without casting any political aspersion, the recent example of the shortage of IAS officers in both the state and the center is an example. We just don't have enough people. In Tamilnadu, we have hundreds of posts and we have only about 300 IAS officers. So we are not exactly with a surplus either. So I would say overall, we need to increase the administrative capability. And if I was to take one specific example in this point, I would say we have to fundamentally improve the GST system. I've been a member of the council since May. I attended the meeting, the recent council meeting in December, at which I asked a series of questions. And to be fair, the Honorable Union Finance Minister admitted there were some disconnects, for example, between the Fitment Committee and the ministers in the GST Council. So part of the problem is that for something of this complexity, this relatively new system, we have very few people working on it full time. I'm a finance minister. I'm also a GST council member. The convener of the council is the revenue secretary. He has a day job as a revenue secretary. He's also the convener of the GST council. The fitment committee members are all IAS officers with their own day jobs in their respective governments. So one of the things I think we need to do is kind of staff up and tool up the systems that are the backbone of the country's revenue system and administrative system. We in Tamil Nadu, certainly, I've announced in the last budget that we're going to set up a special kind of think tank, if you will. After coming back from Delhi, after the December meeting, I'm now clear that we should ramp it up significantly. We are going to invest in a lot of intellectual, workforce and see for the country, especially since I'm a member of the standing committee on systemic reforms, the GOM on systemic reforms for the GST Council. It is our duty patriotically, and Tamil Nadu, we have the resources that we can do something about it. The second, I think, is to cut down the gap between intent, which comes in announcements, and actual outcomes, right? And I've spoken and written about this in multiple places. And while the ambitions are very clear, and in fact visionary in many cases, we find that the execution is not reaching that level. And particularly if I take the case of MSMEs and the kinds of announcements and relief packages that were announced both by the Union government and by the Reserve Bank of India, in my first SLBC meeting, it became clear that even the branch managers of the branches down in, let's say, Karur or Salem or Madurai were not fully aware of the relief measures, and therefore were not translating them to the entrepreneurs. So we did some cooperative work. We tried to set up some cells and some advertisements that the government of Tamil Nadu paid for, and tried to the RBI very graciously, the regional office offered to run a training program on the schemes, and so we tried to facilitate that. So there's a lot we can do, but I think what it calls for is really an improvement in cooperative federalism, in the sense that while the union gathers the bulk of the money and sets the agenda and drives the vision, to execute it needs the states, it needs the local bodies, it needs everybody's engagement, particularly as Mr. Chandyok said, to reach the middle and bottom of the pyramid, to reach the big corporates and the high end of the pyramid is not that hard. Everybody has access to everything. But to reach the middle and bottom of the pyramid, we need to improve all our democratic institutions, all our democratic processes, because that's how we make sure it's inclusive. That's how we make sure everybody gets access and everybody gets a seat at the table, everybody gets a piece of the pie. Mr. Ponusamy very kindly mentioned about the system I introduced to track files. I want to mention that I have a policy, no file sits at my desk for more than a week. So any file that comes in by this Friday will be processed by next Friday. Either it will be approved or it will be rejected, or it will be sent asking the secretary or somebody to come and discuss further or provide additional information. So, the institution of processing and decision making has to be both transparent and timely and recorded. So I have a computerized system, because otherwise there was no system in the government to track the movement of these files. And now we're going to do it 100% online, like some other states have before us. The third thing I would say is to take advantage of global trends. There's a whole lot of move away from China. There's some tensions in the global trade system, and both in terms of working with institutions like CII, but also the specialty industries in every state, or in fact in every district, as Mrs. Datta said. We should work together to take advantage of macro trends that are of course changing all the time, but right now seem to be in our favor. The other thing I would say is to leverage leapfrog technology. Things that can get us 2-3 generations ahead in one shot. And the startup culture in India is so encouraging. In Tamil Nadu, the other day I attended the CII Connect and found so many wonderful technologies that the government of Tamil Nadu can use. So, for example, I've asked the IT department to set up a Sell to Tamil Nadu Day, Sell to Government Day. And then I was informed that my counterparts in Telangana already have something like this, where the accelerator that the government sponsors has inbuilt into it a component where automatically they have access to sell to the government departments, things like drone technology, things like Internet of Things related, cooking for mass, things like noon meal schemes, survey methodology, disaster management. There's just so many technologies that we can use. And, with the Internet of Things and with the low cost of the kind of last mile transducers and transformers and data sensors, it is now a whole new game. Finally, I would say that our banking system and our debt markets need a lot of improvement, because we don't have either an efficient market relative to most parts of the world. We are over-reliant on the banking system. The banking system obviously has its own limitations. It is profoundly duration mismatched asset and liability model, so they're not inherently in the business of making long-term commitments. because the bulk of the deposits are short-term deposits or effectively zero duration. So I think from the overall development of the debt markets to the resilience of the banking sector to the leveraging of technology, and then to make it reach the last mile, including individuals. In fact, access to unsecured credit is very poor in this country. And that is one of the stumbling blocks to growth and stumbling blocks to social justice, to social equality, to economic fairness. This is one of the reasons that I have made a commitment as a finance minister that every single SLBC meeting I will meet personally, I will attend. And from the first SLBC meeting, I have been asking for better data, more timely aggregation of data on what is happening at every branch and every bank, so that we can get a more accurate picture of the statewide development in a timely manner, that we can react to it in a way that affects the outcome. It doesn't help me to find out 3 months or 6 months later what the performance was 2 quarters back. So, I'm very hopeful so far. The SLBC has been working very proactively with us, very closely. I think we can, working together, make significant strides. As I pointed out, of course, at some level, from a macroeconomic perspective, we want fiscal policy and monetary policy to be relatively independent and counter-cyclical to each other to control the economy. But at some other level, at the state level, and particularly for those of us who don't control the currency or the repo rates, it is in our interest to work closely with the banking sector to ensure that the lifeblood of credit reaches everybody and in a timely way. So I think, if I put all of that together, let me just say that, of course, there are many macroeconomic issues we should think about: the extent of debt, the debt to GDP, whether or not we will be able to get a new source of liquidity through inclusion in the international emerging market debt indices, whether there's a crowding out effect, what happens if inflation goes, the way it's going. So there are many problems ahead of us. But the answer to all of them is only one thing, which is growth. Growth solves a lot of problems. Whatever we do, if we make sure that jobs are created and economic activity increases, and it is participated in by broad enough a segment of our society, then that removes all kinds of problems and alleviates a lot of ills. So I think at the end of the day, of course, we want to work as closely as possible with the union government, with other states, with the local bodies, with the industry groups, with entrepreneurs, with individuals. And I think collectively, though we are somewhat statistically at a difficult point, I think functionally, given we are just emerging after 2 years of a pandemic and 3 waves, there seems to be a good opportunity to show significantly better results in the coming year than we did in the last year. And so I hope that when we meet next time, that we'll have a good year or so behind us to talk about. Thank you again for inviting me and for the opportunity to speak.
Sir, thank you so much, sir. You are correctly at this administration capability. I think it's need by every state government and the central government also. We are seeing a lot of death in this, lot of issues are there. I think correctly you are addressing. Also for Tamilnadu, you are there as HR minister. That's very good. Honourable Minister, whether you can be doing 1 or 2 questions, you have time, about 5 minutes.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. I will just ask this. I think it's good that the HR you have taken, so I think a lot of changes we must be contemplating, files movement and how to train these people. See, generally, sir, we are corporate, very difficult to retain people. Attrition is 25-30%. In some industries, 40-50%. But in the government, no attrition at all. Even if you're not giving it, but they are working. So how their vision can be changed, sir? I think this one thing you have to basically, while selecting, so now, of course, I'm so happy that you have recommended most of the recruitment be through TNPSC. That's a good move. I think the capability of people, I think the aspiration of people, the people with the aspiration to join government service. I think, see, some of the people, what they say, even if I don't know anything, I can join a government until my age, I will earn money and retire. And I will get pension, all these benefits available. That type of mentality. How to bring talent, sir. I think this you will be definitely doing it. We just want to know this. And also, sir, this state PSUs, is there anything can be, of course, you may not be directly handling some of the institutions you may be handling. Is there any possibility to bring, no, bringing talent, outside talent, and like we have some of the public sector, we have this TNPL listed company. Like that, is there any possibility? Or bring some from industry, we can bring some people. I think one of the things they have done, guidance bureau they brought from industry. That's working very, very well. They have all aspiration. They want to, midnight also they will call and ask for some clarification. So something like that is working. Can be built, sir? I think these are the two questions I'd like to ask you, sir.
Yes, sir. Your question itself was very elaborate, so let me maybe give only a very short answer. I would say that we have a different problem than private industry. Most people would agree that government wages are above market at the very least, potentially way above market. So we don't have any attrition. Our job is productivity, our job is right talent screening, so forth. So I don't want to get too far into it, but I will just say three or four things. One, we want to standardize and homogenize the service rules, the recruitment procedures, etc. Two, we want to make them very efficient and frequent. I don't like this once a year exam, once in 2 years exam stuff. We cannot fill the pipeline adequately. Three, we must separate the academic or technical qualification away from the aptitude and the kind of adaptation capability and so forth, like the UPSC does. So there's a lot of steps to be done. Broadly speaking, based on my much of my career was either in investment banking or in consulting, and in both these industries, you learn that actually human resources are much more important than money. Money comes and goes, cycles come and go, products come and go. Sometimes it's good, sometimes bad. But if you have the right talent, you can come through any time. So we have increased the training a lot. We are going to increase a lot more training, a lot more compliance. Even today, I was in a conversation with the chairman of the Tamilnadu Public Service Commission about bringing some increased continuous training on whatever ongoing on the job learning or certification or compliance, like we used to have in the banks about every year recertifying against prevention of corruption or anti-money laundering, things like that. So there's a lot to be done. In terms of lateral entry or co-opting people from the industry, well, I think at some level we have no choice because we don't have enough human beings. So definitely at the senior levels, I'm not talking at the junior levels, but at the senior levels, as you said in guidance, as we are sitting, and though to be honest, I've been so little time in the job that I've only worried about the big picture components of the job. I really haven't gotten into. In the finance department, we have something called the BPE, the Bureau of Public Enterprises, which is the regulating and oversight body of all the PSUs, PSEs in Tamil Nadu. I really haven't had a chance to look at it. I know there's a lot to be done. I know previous CAG reports when I was a opposition MLA and a PAC member, Public Accounts Committee member. Previous CAG reports have highlighted there are over 300 entities in Tamil Nadu that have not even filed their annual statement for more than 2 years. Somewhere between boards and corporations and councils and whatnot. So there is some need for a cleanup and a consolidation and a kind of a one-time reset, but also we are going to need to bring in a lot more people from outside, particularly on those entities, and it's the right thing to do. So of course, with the Chief Minister's guidance and with more detailed discussions, but that's the direction we're heading.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. This session is going to conclude. I want to thank Honorable Minister Finance Government of Tamil Nadu for taking his time and also giving a very clear-cut message to us on administration and various things. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.